Ric Flair, To Be the Man, Chapter 2. Says, before joining Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, I bleached my hair blonde, modeling myself after guys like superstar Billy Graham and Dusty Rhodes. Chapter 2. Breaking into the business. After dropping out of college, I got a job selling insurance. I kind of liked it. It was a challenge, but I applied myself and did pretty well. I had friends everywhere, so I took the general agent of the company around and we began writing up policies on them. He even wrote my dad's pension plan. In my first year, I made about $30,000, which was big money. If I'd wanted to make a career out of this, I think I would have done okay. I was certainly off to a good start. I also started bouncing at George's in the Park, the best dinner and dance club in Minneapolis. It was an upscale place, so we didn't have too many problems. We had one guy, Ron Kane, who we called our hitman. He was a legitimate tough guy with a metal plate in his head, and everybody in Minneapolis knew about him. If a patron was acting unruly, Ron would ask him to leave. If there was a problem, Ron issued a verbal warning. My record's 300-0 and it's not going to change tonight. That was usually all it took to get the person to leave. One night I was standing by the cigarette machine when I saw a big guy around 300 pounds walking in smoking a Salem. I gestured to the other bouncer and said, "Man, that looks like Ken Batera." The other bouncer shrugged. "Kinda." I knew all about Ken Batera because I was a weightlifting fan. I just read an article about him becoming the first man to press 500 pounds. He'd been on ABC's Wide World of Sports. In 1968, he was at Brigham Young University. He placed third in a National College Athletic Association tournament for throwing a 16-pound shot put nearly 66 feet. As a power lifter, he bench pressed 560 pounds, squatted 820, and deadlifted 785. In his amateur career, he'd won 4 gold medals at the 1971 Pan Am Games and set 84 national or higher level records. I went over and introduced myself. Ken was from Portland, Oregon, but he was in Minneapolis training for the 1972 Olympics. Verne Gagne, the American Wrestling Association world champion and promoter, was sponsoring him. Verne had been on the 1948 U.S. Olympic wrestling team and saw potential in Ken, believing that he could have a career in professional wrestling. The plan was for the Batera to start wrestling on Verne's cards after making a strong showing at the Olympic Games. Ken Batera. Rick wanted to know what I was doing there. I joked, "Well, you'd have to be somewhere," then told him I'd been to Minneapolis before. My brother Jack was defensive line coach for the Minnesota Vikings and later head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. Rick looked at my cigarette. "You smoke?" I answered. "Yeah, and I drink too." A few days later, Rick's parents were having a little dinner for his 21st birthday, and he invited me over to the house. His family was really nice, and in his room he had a stack of wrestling magazines about 4 feet high. He was a real avid fan. We ended up moving into a house together in South Minneapolis. We didn't have any furniture, but I was selling water beds, so I put them all over the house. One of them was round, and kids from the neighborhood would come over and jump up and down on it like a trampoline. Okay, it's back to Rick. I call the entire time I lived with Batera my endless summer. Ken didn't train until the afternoon, so we kept the party going as late as we wanted. For a time, he was also bouncing part-time at George's in the Park, so we'd bring a group back to the house and meet up with Mike Goldberg, who'd been in another part of town and had some other people with him. I never went to bed. I was delighted to have Ken Batera as a friend. It was great showing him off to people, and I couldn't believe the man's strength. After we both became wrestlers, I remember helping him train for the World's Strongest Man competition in 1977. We had a harness made, and he pulled a van up and down the street. I'd never seen anyone like him. I started weightlifting in high school and now began working out with Ken. Having the chance to train at his level really inspired me, but once while we were in the gym, I had to ask him, "How can you drink and smoke and do this?" "That's what all the athletes do in Eastern Europe, the East Germans and the Russians," he said. I learned more about drinking vodka in Russia than I did about sports. As far as smoking goes, you don't have to be able to breathe to lift weights. Before the Olympics, he was trying to become as big as possible. I began eating like him. We'd drink 2 gallons of milk and eat 2 dozen eggs, yolks and all, then go to Burger King for 5 Whoppers. He transformed everything into muscle. In my case, 40% of what I ate became fat. After the 72 Olympics, Verne Gagne was going to train Patera and a couple of other guys to become pro wrestlers. I was interested in joining them, but I didn't know if Gagne would be willing to consider me. Just before I met Patera, I had run into Mad Dog Vacan in a bar, reminded him that I had been the lifeguard at his pool, and inquired about getting into wrestling. Mad Dog sent me to a wrestler friend, Ric Flairs. We had one workout in a gym with no wrestling ring, exchanged a couple of holds, went out for some beers, and that was it. I already knew Verne's son, Greg. He'd been at the University of Minnesota while I was there, and he was a pretty good quarterback. We had different groups of friends, but I always thought of him as a fun guy. The thing was that we'd never spoken about his father or professional wrestling, and I wasn't sure if I should approach him. You have to understand, Verne Gagne was like a god in the Twin Cities, bigger than even Bud Grant, who had led the Minnesota Vikings into the Super Bowl. Verne became the first AWA champion in 1960 and held the title 10 times. North America was divided into regional wrestling territories at the time, but the AWA had expanded from Minneapolis to Chicago, Salt Lake City, Denver, Winnipeg, and eventually Las Vegas and San Francisco. Everybody knew that Verne was the power behind the scenes. His television show was one of the highest rated in Minnesota, and he had a reputation as a successful businessman in areas not related to wrestling. In time, Patera arranged for me to have a meeting with Verne. Here I was standing in front of this really big star that I'd grown up watching on television, and I was intimidated. I found myself looking at the floor, afraid to even make eye contact. Verne was about to start a pro wrestling training camp and wanted only top athletes. Patera and Greg Gagne were in class along with another acquaintance of mine, Jumping Jim Brunzell, who would later become Greg's tag team partner in the AWA and one of the Killer Bees with B. Brian Blair. In the World Wrestling Federation, the other 2 students were Bob Bruggers, a former linebacker with the Miami Dolphins and San Diego Chargers, and Hussein Khosrow Vaziri, a great amateur wrestler from Iran who was an assistant coach on the 1972 U.S. Olympics team. Later, as the Iron Sheik, a.k.a. Sheiky Baby, Khosrow would become the World Wrestling Federation champion. I'd always done well at sports, so I figured that if I kept getting bigger and stronger, I could make it. But Verne told me, you know, it's not easy being a professional wrestler. In fact, it's a task and a half. I kept looking at the floor and nodding, like I understood, but honestly, I couldn't even begin to make sense of what I was about to do. Patera, I told Rick, you were born to be in this business. This business was made for guys like you. Verne wasn't so sure. I had 5 guys training already, he said. I don't have room for 6. But he eventually agreed to put Rick through the motions with the rest of us. Our main trainer was Billy Robinson, an Englishman who had a reputation as a shooter, meaning if a match got out of hand, he could shoot or fight for real and hook his opponent with a hold that could cripple him. Billy did most of the training with a few assistants like Don the Magnificent Morocco. We'd start off running along this frozen creek, slipping and sliding. I'm not exaggerating, you'd have to wear 3 sweatsuits. The only way to stay warm was to keep moving and not slow down the whole day for 6 or 8 hours. It's back to Rick. One day it was 10 degrees, the next it was 10 below. We ran around this farm, not on a track, but on a customized path that went about 2 miles. The only one who made me look good was Ken. His legs were so big from all the squatting that they were chafing together. We had to do 500 free squats, 200 push-ups, and 200 sit-ups. I'd never trained so hard in my life. Not once had I ever done a free squat. I hadn't done push-ups in years. I wasn't used to doing sit-ups. Kin Patera. We were doing neck bridges, calisthenics, jumping jacks, everything. Then we went to work out in the ring, which was inside of one of Verne's horse barns. The horses were downstairs and the chickens were upstairs on the right. It was below zero temperatures with one light bulb in the whole barn just dangling on a wire. The slats on the barn were about an inch apart, so there were times when we'd show up to 4-foot snowdrifts in the place. The chickens would be roosting on the crossbeams of the barn, shitting in the ring, so we'd have to clean the mat. The ring was all broken down and the ropes were fucked up. They should be tight because you're supposed to run off of them, but these were actually drooping. Here's Verne Gagne, a multi-millionaire, and he had the worst possible conditions for us to train in. Eventually, when it got unbearably cold, he did rent the St. Paul Armory for us. Finally, we had hot running water and flushing toilets. But before then, I'd tell you it was bizarre. In the ring, we'd do 50 front rolls, then 50 back rolls. After that, we'd give each other 50 turnbuckle reversals, pulling a guy off of one set of turnbuckles and throwing him into the set on the opposite side of the ring. Then you'd do 50 shoulder tackles, 50 flying mares, 50 suplexes. Fuck! It was unbelievable. When Joe Scarpella, an old-timer who'd been an All-American at the University of Iowa, came up one day, he said, "Verne just took 10 years off your career." He said we took more bumps, falls in our training than he had in his 25 years in the ring. "This is brutality," he told us. "This is uncalled for." It's back to Rick. I must have been at camp for 2 days when I quit. I called up Greg and said, "I'm done." I was dead. Mentally, I couldn't take it. Greg told his dad, so Verne came over to my house, grabbed me by the shirt, and threw me out on the front lawn. "It took you 5 years to graduate high school," he screamed. "You quit college. Well, you're not quitting this. I didn't sign you up to be a quitter." Verne said things to me that I'm sure my father had always been tempted to say, but my dad never spoke to me like that. It hit a nerve, and it made me want to prove to Verne that I was better than he thought. So I went back to camp. Life didn't get any easier after that. We'd have to wait in line to wrestle Billy Robinson, who would get behind you and try to turn you on your back, and you'd have to get away. Jim Brunzell would be standing in line behind me, and I'd try to maneuver my body so Brunzell went first. I'd spend the whole time thinking, how can I get Brunzell in front of me? It was that bad. Out of all of us, Cosgrove had accomplished the most as an amateur wrestler. While everyone else was out of breath, he whipped through the exercises. But, like a lot of amateur wrestlers, he was always running his mouth like he didn't take professional wrestling seriously. "Verne Gagne or Billy Robinson couldn't beat me on their best day," he'd brag. Robinson got wind of this, so he lined all of us up one day and told Cosgrove that he wanted to wrestle him first. "I heard you said I can't turn you over," Robinson challenged. "You can't," Cosgrove shot back. Robinson had him get down, spread eagle in amateur position. He got on top of him, began fucking his ass rapidly, and came in him. No, I'm joking. He got on top of him, but didn't have the leverage to turn Cosgrove over and pin him. But Robinson was an expert on hook style, which was illegal in the amateur ranks, and after about 10 minutes, he brought the point on his knee down in Cosgrove's thigh, fucking up his hip. Cosgrove was in agony as Robinson turned him over and pinned him. "See? I told you he could do it. I could do it," he crowned. Kin Patera. Cosgrove hated Robinson after that. He said he had no respect for him. "Billy no coach," he said. "Billy don't do that. Coach don't do that to student." Robinson was a prick. That's why he had trouble in different places where he wrestled. Sailor White punched him out in Montreal, then pissed into his wounds. The Rock's grandfather, Peter Maivia, nearly dug out his eye in another fight. Verne and Robinson were close, but outside of the AWA, nobody wanted to work with Billy. They were afraid he'd fuck them up with his cheap shots, and chances were that he would. When I saw what Robinson did... Okay, it's back to Rick. When I saw what Robinson did to the Iron Sheik, I was shocked, mortified, and ready to kill myself all at the same time. I thought I was next, so I ended up quitting camp one more time. I told Greg, "Don't tell your dad I'm not coming back." Greg said okay and walked away. Of course, the second he saw his father, he told him. This time Verne didn't bother going to my house. He just called me up on the phone and said, "I hope I don't have to come back there and get you." That was all I needed to hear. I returned the next day like nothing was wrong. The entire time that I was in training camp, I was waiting for the big secret of professional wrestling to be unbottled. Were the matches real or predetermined? I kept thinking. When are they going to tell us? But everybody was so serious that I didn't dare ask one of the trainers. In fact, I didn't even discuss it with the other guys. Verne simply wasn't going to give something like that away until he had to. In my case, that meant 5 minutes before my first match. I was beginning to get a feeling for how things worked by hanging out in the AWA dressing room. On Saturdays, we'd head over to the WTC and stations and watch them tape the TV show. If the guys needed a gopher, I was happy to oblige. Sometimes a few of them would call me over to the bar just to kind of test me and see what kind of attitude I was bringing into the business. Occasionally, Cowboy Bill Watts, Dick the Destroyer Bayer, or another veteran came into the promotion, and I'd be his designated driver, sitting behind the wheel and grabbing every road story or pearl of wrestling wisdom that he was willing to throw at me. Superstar Billy Graham had a tremendous physique. He'd reveal it by pulling off his tie-dye shirt to flex and kiss his biceps. I loved to listen to him do an interview talking about his 22-inch pythons. Yes, he used the term before Hulk Hogan, and rambling on in that smooth-talking voice of his. "I am the reflection of perfection, the number one selection." Whenever Billy had to go out of town to wrestle for another promotion, I'd be assigned to drive him to the airport in his Eldorado. He knew that I liked weight and powerlifting and how much I wanted to get into the business. Sometimes he'd invite me out to dinner just to talk. I was a young guy, but he was a star, so I appreciated the time he took with me. And then here's a picture. It says, Dusty Rhodes, one of my idols when I started in the business. His rapport with fans was incredible. And then it shows Dusty Rhodes just standing in the ring in like the 70s with a microphone. You can still see the cord. I also started hanging out with Dusty Rhodes, another main eventer who had a tremendous delivery on interviews. Dusty was playing a bad guy at the time, teaming up with Dirty Dick Murdoch as the Outlaws, but he was so cool, putting his hands behind his head and wiggling his 300-pound body, or crooking his finger forward and hitting his charging foe with a big elbow. I was infatuated with being like Dusty. At the end of training camp, Verne told us that we could do any move that we wanted. I had another student lie down on the canvas, then hit the ropes, and dropped a Dusty elbow on him. Verne, the wrestling purist, went crazy. "Oh my God!" he yelled. "Is that what you've learned since you've been here?" Just before I had my first match, I asked Verne if I could be Rambling Ricky Rhodes, Dusty's brother. I was ready to curl my hair back like Dusty's and everything. "No, you can't," he insisted. "Look at the letters you have. Ric Flair. Change a few letters around and you're Ric Flair. It's a good name. You don't want to tie yourself to somebody else before you even get started." But to think how things might have turned out if Verne had said yes. Leslie and I had gotten married in 1971. She had wanted me to convert to Judaism for the sake of her grandparents more than anything else. I'd always had Jewish friends that didn't have a problem with it, but when I went to one of those religion classes and they started speaking Hebrew, I balked. I wasn't going to sit through that stuff week after week. We ended up getting married at Plymouth Congregational Church in Minneapolis, where my dad was a deacon. As for wrestling, my parents weren't sure that I was making a wise career choice. They knew all about Verne Gagne's achievements. They just weren't confident that I'd be able to make a living at doing the same thing. Leslie was more supportive. Before my first match, she made me a jacket out of blue satin fabric and put fringes on it. I must have looked at myself wearing it in the mirror a dozen times. I was so proud of it. On December 10th, 1972, in Rice Lake, Wisconsin, I made my wrestling debut against George Scrap Iron Gadaski. Just before I stepped through the curtain, Verne instructed me, just go out there and do exactly what George tells you to do. You guys are going to go through. I hadn't heard the term before. What do you mean, go through? Nobody wins. It's a draw. Simple as that. George was the guy who set up the ring every night. In fact, around that period, I'd often ride with him in the ring truck, helping him out. He wrestled either way, meaning that he could be the good guy one night and the bad guy the next. He and I had no conversation beforehand. We just got in the ring and he said, give me a tackle. So I did. Slam me, he said. I gave him a body slam. Take a backdrop. I bounced off the ropes, and when Gadaski beat down, I did a flip over his shoulders and onto the canvas. The bell rang when the 10-minute time limit expired. I'd exhausted myself during the match and needed a place to rest, but everything had gone fine. I definitely passed my first test. Greg Gagne was the promoter's son, so naturally, Verne had wanted to make him a star. I spent much of my rookie year wrestling with Greg. We had become close friends, learning our trade and having fun at the same time. In the AWA, to break character and socialize with the wrestler who beat you up on TV last week was considered a grave insult to the wrestling business. You didn't travel together. If you were in the same bar or restaurant, you didn't sit at the same table. On the road, guys would occasionally go into each other's rooms for a drink, but no outsiders were ever allowed at those gatherings. In 1989, the World Wrestling Federation, in a bid to deregulate the Athletic Commission's supervision of wrestling in New Jersey, obliterated that code forever when it admitted, at a public hearing, that we were sports entertainment. Believe it or not, I know some guys who are still losing sleep over that. Part of me relates to them. I feel that I've been able to make that transition to what wrestling has become today, but once in a while, things do disturb me. I don't like seeing arena employees sit and watch while my opponent and I work out a match in-ring before the doors open. Recently, I spotted a TV reporter strolling around the building with his kids while the guys were rehearsing. That really aggravated me. We've worked hard to create a certain mystique about this business, and it bothers me when so much of the magic is given away. On the surface, the AWA seemed like a traditional wrestling company. As the public face of the promotion, Verne appeared to be pretty conservative. In reality, though, he was as wide open as anybody. He just picked his spots. When you partied with Verne, you knew this. At the end of the night, you'd have to wrestle your way out of there. He and Robinson always wanted to wrestle somebody on the floor. I figured that out after I was thrown around a few times. I kept hanging out with Verne, but once he got that look in his eyes, like he wanted to torture me in front of the girls, I was out of there. After a wrestling match, Andre the Giant was another guy who loved to party. One night in Charlotte, I saw him drink 106 beers. That's a Frank. Frank Valuis, his traveling companion and translator, drank 54. Another night at a beachfront bar in Norfolk, Black Jack Mulligan and Dick Burdock were play fighting with Andre when one of them sucker punched him. Andre dragged them both into the ocean, stuck their heads under the water, and started drowning them. When he'd let them up, they'd all come back to the bar laughing, but that was the business. I used to drive Andre around when he came to wrestle in the AWA. He was billed as 7'4" and more than 500 pounds, and he truly was an incredible sight. Larry the Axe Henning once told me that Andre had an extra set of everything. 2 hearts, 2 rows of teeth. Everything I had in the car, I found myself peeking. Every time I had him in the car, I found myself peeking into his mouth, looking for that extra row of teeth. And there's a picture, and it shows Ric Flair. And he's got Andre the Giant, and it looks like he's trying to get into him in an arm bar, but he's holding his face instead of his arm. And then the caption on it says, "Andre the Giant was truly an 8th wonder of the world, both inside the ring and at the bars." Here's the picture. Six months after I broke into wrestling, some of the AWA guys were booked on a tour in Japan. Verne asked me, "Do you want to go out there with Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch?" I was so excited. God, I'll go anywhere with Rhodes and Murdoch. My mistake. From the time we landed, I carried their bags. I had traveled halfway around the world to be a bellhop. They sang at the top of their lungs on the train ride between cities. We drank all night, every night. They broke down my door at the hotel, sprayed the room with a fire extinguisher, and threw all my clothes out of a 10th-story window. That was how you became one of the boys. You got rode hard. The veterans wanted to see if you would break. I actually had it a lot easier than most. On June 26, 1973, I was booked in a cage match for the first time in my life against Rusher Kimura in the Japanese city of Odate. I had never bled in a match, so Rhodes and Murdoch gave the referee a blade and told him to get some blood out of me. He cut me from one end of my head to the other. Afterward, I went into the back and asked somebody to take a picture. Rhodes and Murdoch started laughing at me, the rookie trying to be big time. And before I could feel too much pride, I realized that they'd left me at the building in the middle of nowhere. After the tour, Leslie was supposed to meet me in Hawaii, but they were a few hours before her plane arrived. Rhodes and Murdoch took me to the beach, and we got so hammered that I ended up falling asleep on the sand. When I woke up, my wife had been waiting in the airport for nearly 4 hours. Ken Patera. Rick loved Rhodes and Murdoch, and he always wanted to be with them. Like him, they were completely out of control. Rhodes and Murdoch had a cowboy gimmick, and they really played the part. They also had this friend from Louisiana who'd come up and visit them. One night they were so drunk, they drove to Louisiana, got a mule, and brought that fucker back to Minneapolis. Then they put that mule in this beautiful luxury apartment complex they were living in. The place was so new that it wasn't even finished yet. They had a couple of bales of hay and oats and water in there. There was this downtown bar, a country and western place, where the stage would come out of the floor on hydraulics. A lot of the customers were motorcycle guys, and it was pretty rowdy. Well, Murdoch rode that mule into the bar and shot a fucking pistol off. Of course, the cops came and a big fight ensued. Gagne found out about it a couple of days later and threatened to fire Murdoch and Rhodes. It was a big hoopla. I know that Leslie didn't like the effect this way of life was having on Rick. I was living next door to them when she was pregnant with their daughter Megan. They were having all kinds of problems, and Rick was pissed off because she wanted him to quit wrestling. I told him, "Listen here, you cocksucker. I went through all this fucking effort to get you into this, and you're doing good. You're not quitting now." Alright, it's back to Rick. Rhodes and Murdoch had 2 saddles, a table, a couch, a few chairs, and a TV in their apartment, and about 8 cases of beer. I lived in the bottom part of the house for a while. I had to. Leslie kicked me out. We'd separate, then get back together. Sometimes I'd tell her that I was wrestling in towns where I wasn't even scheduled and just take off with Dusty and Murdoch. Once, Dusty called up to tell me that Kay Noble, a girl wrestler who I thought was pretty good looking, and Donna Limke, a female wrestler who he liked, were over at his place. "I'm gonna put Kay on you like lightning on a June bug," he said, and I drove over there at 100 miles per hour. On another occasion, we were all supposed to wrestle in Mitchell, South Dakota. Dusty said, "Why don't you take Patera's car and come with us?" I'm like, that's my Dusty Rhodes impersonation. Ken had just bought a big Oldsmobile, 4-door, and was out of town. "Ah, fuck, I can't drive his car," I convinced myself. It can't hurt to put a couple 100 miles on it, right? We got out to Mitchell in freezing temperatures, of course, and they threw me out by a farm in the middle of the night. It was pitch black and I was starting to look for lights. 3 minutes passed, but it seemed like an hour. Then they came back to the road, with Murdoch shooting his 9mm out of the fucking window. I'm lucky I didn't get shot or frostbite, or both. It made me miss carrying their bags in Japan. By the time we had returned to Minneapolis, either Murdoch or Rhodes had burned a cigar hole in the Oldsmobile's upholstery. Strawberry cake was smeared everywhere, and it no longer looked like a brand new car. I thought Patera was going to kill me. Ken Patera says, "I was furious. I said, I loan you my car and trust you to take care of it, and now it's all fucked up." I didn't have much cash at the time, but I paid $500 to buy Dusty Rhodes an 18-karat gold money clip with a $20 gold piece in the center. Leslie and I were with Dusty at a country western place when I pulled him aside and gave him the present. It was my way of telling him, "Thanks for taking me under your wing and helping me become part of this business." In this book, you're going to read some great stories about Dusty Rhodes and some bad stories about Dusty Rhodes. Yet, despite all the tension we'd have between us later on, whenever I think of Dusty, the good will always outweigh the bad. And that's the end of chapter 2. So tomorrow I'm going to read chapter 3, which is called Mr. Charisma. So enjoy. I hope you guys enjoy this shit. Because I don't do it for my fucking health. Follow